Gene, for that introduction. I want to thank you, and I'd like to take this minute to essentially ask everybody if they could salute you and essentially the organization you've created. So it would be Gene and the entire Garino family, as well as the Residential Assisted Living National Association. So I want to take this minute and thank you guys for creating this industry that we're all so proud to be members of. So thank you guys very much. My company, Owner Builder Advisors, we've been involved in the residential assisted living community for the past 5 years. We have been providing project oversight services in all 50 states. We've worked with RALs in many states in the Midwest, in the South, in Southern California and Northern California. We're ensuring that owners' needs are being integrated into the RAL process through the construction portion of it. And we are also limiting the risks to the RAL owners through the construction process as well. What we want to do today is we'd like to have go through who OBA is, and at the same time, my company. Just real quick on me, I've been involved in construction for the past 40 years. I'm a licensed contractor. I can build bridges, I can build homes, I've built subdivisions, I've built homes, custom homes. So what we try to do is bring all of that experience to you folks while you're inside the RAL process. My goal today is to share with you several of the tools that we've developed over time and that can be used to better manage your risks in the construction process as a residential assisted living developer or operator. We want to make sure those facilities are in fact meeting and managing the risk of construction. One of the things that's happened to us that we never anticipated. I mean, I've spoken at these conferences before, and this is the first time I'm talking about the importance of the RAL industry relative to the pandemic. What we've found is that in the wake of the COVID-19 virus, one of the demographics that all became mostly concerned with is essentially the elderly population. And these concerns will grow exponentially with the growth of the virus if in fact we can't contain it. It appears that the big box issues or the big box traditional nursing homes may facilitate the spread of the virus or may have facilitated the spread of the virus. Obviously, safety will be on the forefront of any of the discussions that occur relative to rethinking senior citizen housing. We've found that the new RAL communities will have the luxury of technology coupled with socially distanced living situations, which will dwarf traditional nursing homes in the eyes of the consumer when it comes to safety and quality of living. What we've done is we've developed a number of tools that we want to share with you today. We have had several tools developed that we've incorporated into our risk process. What I'd like to do is start sharing those tools with you. The first tool, and probably the first step that you'll be involved in, would be the site review, site selection, zoning, and the permit processing. One of those is, in fact, probably the key part of that is connecting with local professionals. It's incredibly important to ensure that your project gets properly approved. You go through the zoning requirements, the permit processing. You've dealt with realtors, the professional realtors in the area, relative to site selection. Part of that's done with the vision that you've had for your home, be it a 4-bedroom, 6-bedroom, 8-bedroom, 10-bedroom, 16-bedroom home. It's that vision that's critical in all of the steps that you're going to be taking moving forward with your RAL. The research you'll find in your research that you're going to be encountering things like conditional use permits, or the need to understand conditional use permits, or zoning variances, building permits. What we're encountering right now is we're encountering a little bit of push from the industry relative to, is it a commercial facility or is it a residential facility? Many times we've had local agencies, local jurisdictions just assume it's a commercial operation. What we do is we try to convince them, no, it's a residential facility, nothing unlike having 10 children in your house or 10 people in your house. So what we've encountered is that if you get familiar with the project site, you get familiar with the local agency, and you get familiar with the neighborhood, it'll better facilitate the growth of the process through the zoning permit process and essentially the site development. We've also found that finding topographical maps, utility, flood maps, flood parcel zoning maps, infrastructure maps, to be well aware of your site really facilitates the knowledge that you can move forward with getting the site developed and selecting the site for your growth. So essentially, it's obtaining as much information as you can on the current physical condition of the site, as well as existing above and below ground utilities. It'll help prevent any kind of roadblocks that you might want to encounter or that you may encounter throughout the construction process. Another tool that we found very popular is we essentially go in and we work with a preliminary floor plan, and we work with a budget. We can develop a budget off of that preliminary floor plan. And what we'll do is it will work with your vision. So let's assume it's a 10-bedroom RAL, 6,000 to 8,000 square feet. We'll go in, we'll take the floor plan, have a floor plan developed, or use a floor plan you've had developed. We'll go through and we'll look at the assumptions that have to be made relative to how can we go through and essentially develop that budget so that we can show you folks how much it's going to possibly cost preliminarily to build that facility, be it a 10-bedroom. What we ask you guys to do is essentially help us go through the specification process. Now, the specifications are the type of framing material that we're going to use that we would assume it's going to be wood, it's going to be lumber. The granite countertops, we would look at cabinetry, we would look at flooring, we would look at carpentry, we'd look at the HVAC system, things like that. So essentially, those are called the specifications of the process of the project. And the more detailed specifications we can make in the vision, or we can put in that vision, the less assumptions that are going to be being used later on. So the preliminary development budget leads to an initial budget that's closer to the final budget. But what we're trying to do is essentially develop a budget that we can now take to investors. We can now take to banks to start those preliminary conversations with the commercial lenders or the SBA lenders that are so important to this process. But it's critical to identify the vision and the specifications so that the contractor that you bring on board or the design team that you may bring on board understands at what level you want to be at. Some folks, and I know Gene has introduced a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3 home. Some folks want to start out with the Toto fixtures and with the very high-end granite, or some folks don't want to do that. So it's crucial to be able to identify those specifications as you start your project so that everybody, the design team and the construction team, know kind of what it is that we're trying to get to relative to your vision. We kind of describe it as low-end, high-end versus hardware versus the appliances versus the fixtures. Those things are critical to be able to choose the teams that you want to work with. Contractors that have worked with Toto fixtures before, contractors that have worked with certain levels of marble or granite. That's going to help define those folks that you want to bring on the design and the build team who are familiar with those type of desired specifications. Another tool that we've used essentially is going through another service that we provide. And I say tools, meaning that these are essentially services that we provide as well, but they're also tools for you folks to use. Throughout my presentation, I'm going to make mention of handouts that are available on many of these, and or they'll be available at the end of the presentation. We'll tell you how we can get these handouts to you. The next tool that we talk about is professional design and legal team vetting process. What we do is that we go into communities, we look for local professional organizations. We vet through them members that we would want to recruit for the build team, and we're looking for and we're concerned with. Had they done RALs before? Are they familiar with multifamily housing? Are they familiar with design standards? Are they familiar with universal design? Are they familiar with are they familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act? I think it's imperative that those folks be involved in the team selection. And what we do is that we'll go through and we'll vet those folks for you, help you make that selection. The structural engineers, the mechanical engineers, the architects, the designers, they're all critical to building that team that we want to put together. And fortunately, throughout the National Association, we have many members that are in fact providing those levels of services. So even going back into RAL, we'll go back and bring in team members and create the team with those folks. Another option is to use design build companies. Design build companies are sometimes referred to as one-stop shops. Those folks are the ones that provide you with design and they'll construct it. So they may have an architect on staff. They'll have obviously the construction team on staff. They'll also have the relationship set up with their suppliers or their vendors or their subcontractors For instance, they'll use their drywallers. They may have a drywall team that they've used for years. That's the nice thing about design build, and it's the same thing with the architectural firms. You can bring them on, or the design firms, you can bring them on and build the components, the structural engineers, the mechanical engineers, and build them that way. And the design build firms will do that as well. Typically, the design firms offer a one-stop shop, and it's a very strong option for folks that are looking for that one cohesive team assembly. The other portion of this is the legal team. When you're looking for a legal team, or when we're looking for a legal team, what we're looking for are the things that are key to the needs of developing the RAL. Some of that's contract reviews, contract development. We're looking at entity development. Does the firm provide LLC development, sub-S corporation development, or corporate or C Corp development? Probably the most important portion of that team member, of the legal team member, is their ability to know construction law. Most attorney firms, and if there's any attorneys or contractors in the audience, please raise your hand. The attorney firms were concerned about construction law, so that as we're going through the process, anything that comes up relative to the contracts, lien releases, things like that are critical to know. So having an attorney firm that's familiar with construction law is imperative to as a team member. The next tool that we use, the next service that we provide, is essentially general contractor and build team vetting. We'll go through and we're performing extensive due diligence and research on general contractors in the area, local general contractors, and we're looking at their licensing, we're looking at their legal structures, we're looking at their credit. Are they involved in their community? Have they been involved in different aspects of the community, volunteerism, things like that? Have they built a similar scope of work before? Have they done RALs? Have they done multifamily? Have they done nursing homes? Those things are all critical to us vetting that general contractor, who's going to be probably the strongest team member, as well as the owner, and the most involved. One of the questions we ask the contractor is, how much of the work are you going to be self-performing? And self-performing is essentially, we have a general contractor who's a builder, a residential builder, who is going to agree to do the concrete and the framing of the facility. And then they're going to sub to subcontractors the plumbing and the electrical and the HVAC out. What we want to do is we want to know that from essentially the point of the fact that the contractor is going to be too busy doing things that other subcontractors could be doing. So it's key to find out whether or not how much of the work they self-perform. Do they have the knowledge and experience of working with the permit processing? Have they done counters before? Have they worked with the staff at city counters before? Some folks don't. Some contractors haven't done that. They use permit processors, or some developers will use permit processors, which sometimes come from attorney firms. They come from contractors. It's an option to use permit processors, but really it's about the familiarity of the contractor with the local jurisdiction. And it's key that they may know somebody on the city council, they may know a planning director or a county supervisor. Things like that help build that relationship with your project, your RAL, and the city or the local jurisdiction that you're dealing with. It could be a county. Another question to ask them is, how long have they worked with their community and fellow subcontractors? Having that team and having the general contractor have his own team is key in the fact that those relationships facilitate supplies, they facilitate schedules, they facilitate getting things done when things are really weren't planned for. Another thing that's a concern about with general contractors is you want to make sure that you have them list any kind of legal actions they've been involved in recently, collections, lawsuits, things like that, just so that your project doesn't get involved in those litigation or potential for litigation events where they're halfway through your project or they're a quarter way through your project, and all of a sudden he has to go to court to defend another case. So it's a concern, and it's just a question to ask while you're doing the vetting. One of the handouts that we have that we have made available is essentially considerations when contracting with GCs, and it's a list of things to look for, and it's many of these things that we've talked about just in the last couple minutes. The next tool that we utilize, that we try to help you folks incorporate into the analysis, into our analysis, is we look at the contractor's build budget. So what we've done is we've gone and we've essentially looked at contractors. We've said, okay, Mr. Contractor, we're interested in bringing you on board. Here's the plans. Can you give us a cost of what you think it's going to be to build it? And what they'll do is that they'll build that budget, and that'll probably be attached to the contract that they submit to you. And that budget essentially looks at the cost of the entire build. So it'll be site improvements. It'll essentially be, it will include the soft costs and the hard costs. Hard costs are essentially of a building build are anything you can touch or grab or hug. Soft costs are anything you can't touch. So for instance, soft costs would be the insurance costs. It would be the cost of renting the superintendent's office or the trailer. Hard costs would be the lumber. Hard costs would be the plumbing fixtures, the lighting fixtures, things like that. So the site improvements would be the installation of the sewer, the water, the storm drain, the paving, the grading to get the pad level so you can so the contractor can build a house. What we look for in the budget analysis, or we're looking for the built budget, is to ensure that the missed items, if there are in fact any missed items in the budget, if in fact they are missed, how bad of a miss has it been? So we want to make sure that if in fact it's missed, how bad is that miss, and can we go through and ensure that the cost can be incorporated in there as we develop them. Another question is, are the soft costs that the contractor is representing, are they adequately being represented? Again, the soft costs, hard costs, and site improvement costs. Do the site improvement costs include the local jurisdiction fees? Do they include the cost of having the sewer lateral that has to come to the new structure tied into the sewer main that's out in the street, or the water main that's out in the street? So those are the kind of things that we look for to identify, to make sure that the budget that's being proposed by the contractor is a thorough budget, is a very comprehensive budget. And again, we've done one initially when we did our initial floor plan and our initial budget. So then it's just a matter of making sure that those two are pretty much presenting the same costs. One of the last things that we want to look for in a budget is the contingency fund. Contingency funds typically represent 5 to 10% of a build, and contingency funds are essentially, those are the oh gosh funds. It's, oh my gosh, we forgot this or we forgot that. We want to typically ask for anywhere between 5 and 10% of the monies that are being generated for the build to be set aside for that contingency fund. And most of the time we find it anywhere between 5 and 10%. The last, or not last, but another tool that we provide is essentially the review of the construction contractor's contract. Many times we've found that the contractor's contract protects the contractor. Not always, but they'll have clauses in there that do in fact protect the owner. What we want to do is review the contract to make sure that the owner is in fact better represented in the contract. One of the things that we look for is a performance clause, is in fact that contract offering the owner, the RAL owner, or you, the developer, an option to ensure that the contractor is performing at a certain level. Is he in fact getting that contract done at the schedule at which you guys agreed on? Is he incorporating the things you agreed on putting into the contract? And is he showing up? One of the clauses that we suggest happen, or we suggest be included, is a 10-day right to cancel clause. And what that means is that if the contractor doesn't show up for 10 days and there's a 10-day right to cancel clause, on day 11, you have the option to go out and find another contractor. And what that'll do is that'll essentially put you in a stronger position, which many folks forget that essentially contractors, subcontractors, professional services are all service providers. And you having the goal, you can make some of the rules, and some of the rules should be in that contract. One of the things that we look for is the RAL LLC being addressed for co-insurance on the policies, on the general liability policies for the general contractor, for the subcontractors. Is that entity being named in those contracts as being protected? Will the subcontractor companies be providing workers' compensation insurance on their employees, as well as general liability on their employees, as well as auto insurance on their employees? Because if you have an employee that's on site of a subcontractor who trips and falls and breaks their neck, that person can then have on site, the attorney will then name the land or the owner, essentially where the person fell, could possibly name them in the lawsuit. Having the coverage on the general liability for the subcontractors could protect you against that. One of the clauses that we also look for is a lien release clause. A lien release is anybody that does work on a site has the legal right to file a lien for payment. And they have to go through a certain process to let you know that they have those rights. And those lien rights are released upon certain types of payment. But those are critical to have a clause that addresses liens and lien releases. Another few things that we like to see added to contracts, literally is attached to the contract, are things like the project payment submittal requirements. So every time the contractor wants to draw down some money for the bill, we would like to see him include invoices, receipts for any of the material that's being requested, or deposit receipts. Many times windows are needed. A deposit's needed for windows. So we would ask if they could have the receipt provided for that window request or that window deposit requirement. We would ask to have a project schedule attached to the contract. We would also ask for the project plans to be attached to the contract. We want the project specifications attached to the contract. So let the contractor know that, hey, we wanted blue wallpaper instead of green wallpaper. And the contract says blue, you put green up, so it's very clear as to who's going to have to pay for this. The last one is the actual build budget would get attached to the contract. What we want to do is make sure that that contract, as I said at the beginning, was that contract represents you as the owner stronger, as well as the contractor. I mean, we're not trying to be unfair to contractors, but at the same time, typically the contract doesn't represent you as thoroughly as it could. What we try to do is make sure that you get represented thoroughly, because it's your money. The next tool that we use is review of the payment applications and the progress draw inspections. The payment application is used every time the contractor wants funds drawn down, usually on a monthly basis. Some contractors ask to be paid every 2 weeks. We suggest that you offer payment once a month. Every 2 weeks usually represents to us there's a cash flow issue or a possible cash flow issue. What we believe is that most contractors should have credit lines. And if in fact they have to go to a credit line to pay a subcontractor, then that's part of doing business. But ultimately what we're looking for is that the contractor ultimately has the paperwork submitted when they're asking for funds to be paid to them for work that's in place. One of the things that's key is that we only pay for work that's complete, unless it's a deposit for windows, for an elevator, something like that. What we want to do is make sure that we have work that's in place is what's being paid for and being requested. Fund requests are typically done in Excel spreadsheets. That benefits the project, it benefits you. You can keep better track of it. The cells and the columns keep better track of it. You can tell what percentage of the line item. If it's $30,000 for drywall and the contractor wants 10%, then he wants a 33% draw on that. Much easier to track Excel spreadsheets with. The monies that are being requested are always for work that has been completed. It has to happen that way, because otherwise you're overfunding. And when you're overfunding, things can happen to the contractor that has him going further over relative to, or the potential for being further over exists. So progress site inspections, we provide those at the same time. The payment application, we'll review the payment application, and then we'll actually provide the progress draw inspection. That's a site visit. We have people across the country, about 8,500 people nationwide that we use on these sites for our inspection services. And we also feel it's critical that we be there to see that the contractor is providing and performing as agreed to in the contracts. The next tool that we use essentially is performing random site visits. We attend site meetings, we do site visits. What that does is it allows us to go to the site to make sure the site's safe, to make sure that the information is being, or not just the information, but the requirements of the contract are being met by the contractor. And we want to make sure that the site is being cleaned so that there's no trip hazards, so that there's not potential safety hazards being given on the site or being left open on the site. So the site visits allow us to do that. We attend site meetings. Contractors from time to time will expect us to be at, or expect the owner to be at site meetings. We will do that. And we'll also just take photos. On all of our site visits, photos are taken, and those photos give us a lot of information relative to what happened, what occurred, when it occurred, and how the process is going, how the progress is meeting schedule. So essentially what we look for are things that on those site visits and when we attend site meetings, it's allowing us to essentially communicate. And to us, communication is probably the number one word in construction. That's probably that's the most important thing, is that people communicate. Overall, what we've done is that we make these services available on an a la carte basis. We've done that for the last probably 4 years. And what we want to do is make sure that if in fact the a la carte services are chosen, then it may be, you might be more familiar with construction than another one of our clients. So you may just want us to come in and do a contract review, or you just might want us to come in and perform the site inspection, or you just might want us to come in and do the permit processing. So you'll have the option. One of the things that OVA has always done is provided that menu of services that we think is important to you. Or what we've done is we've also lumped it. We've lumped into Oversight service subscriptions. We have 3 tiers. We have a 40-hour a month tier available. And those are the ones where we're starting the project up. And we're doing zoning, we're doing permits, processing, we're looking at the floor plan and the budget development. So we're much more involved at the 40-hour level per month. And as we go through the processes, as we go through the build process, we don't minimize, but we go less time needed. So if in fact we're at a 30-hour, like a tier 2, we're essentially doing things like vetting the general contractors. We're creating construction schedules, things like that, or we're helping the contractor put the schedule together and making sure that those things get done. We'll review the contract. So ultimately what happens is that with the amount of time that we're spending from a tier 3 to a tier 1, so a tier 1 is 20 hours a month, tier 2 is 30 hours a month, and tier 3 is 40 hours a month. What we try to do is match the needs for the place that you're at in the process. Some of you will come to us and not have any permit experience at all, and we'll start there. Or some of you will already have permits in place. You'll have contractors selected and you just want us to do the progress inspections. So what we try to do is make all of those services available to you completely. So takeaways, what I'd like to do is make sure that you folks have kind of tips and takeaways from the presentation. One of probably the most important thing is it has to all be in writing. And I know that I can hear contractors nationwide rolling their eyes right now. These are the folks that don't really enjoy paperwork. And what we felt is that paperwork really manages the risk. So if you put everything in writing, and correspondence is done through emails, it's done through letters, it's done through texting, but essentially texting can't be printed. So a lot of times it's just essentially done in writing. So the most correspondence that can happen in writing, the better. If it's in black and white, it's clearer for everybody. And we have a saying, if it's gray, you'll pay. And essentially that means that if it's not in black and white, it can be confused. It needs to be clarified. So if you can get anything in black and white or in writing, it's the better. Another tip is get a detailed contract with specific timelines for phases of construction. Get a detailed line item budget. The more detailed, the better. The more detailed it is, the easier it is for you to, in fact, pay the more things the contractor is asking for. Pay on a scheduled rate or scheduled dates only, and do not pay out without proof of work having been performed from an inspection or an invoice. Many times contractors will come to you and say, I need some money. Well, we're going to pay you once a month, and we've agreed on that. So if it's for a deposit, we'll do that, but anything else, come back once a month or on whatever the agreed upon time disbursements are. Ensure that the permits are in order. Ensure that the permits have been obtained and are posted as they're required by the local agencies. And remember that you control the money. And I say this many times, and I've said it in other presentations, the fact that he who owns the gold makes the rules. And you have to remember that, because many times in these situations, you'll have subcontractors or contractors literally get in your face and say, hey, wait, you can't do that. And what I say is that, yes, you can. I mean, you're the owner. And just as long as it's being clarified and it's in contract form and everybody understands what it is, then it should work. So why would you want to use OPA? Because we're really good at what we do. And we've done this for years. And we have the experience, we have the skill sets to do it. One of the things that we do offer, as I mentioned, is that you can pick and choose any of these services we've discussed today, a la carte, or you can subscribe to the hourly subscription service. So we give you those options. Our industry insights stretch nationwide. We've been in the business for over 20 years, construction monitoring, construction management. And with RALs, it's a heartfelt process for us. And I think OBA is offering a very comprehensive level of service at what time or at any time that you want to come in and ask for a service, or you can ask for a menu of services and or the subscription service. One of the things that we do is that we ease the pressure and stresses associated with developing, and we make it so that you can sleep easier, and we ensure that everybody can build with confidence, and that's the subcontractors, the general contractors. The owner can have the confidence that the team is working, and that we can essentially move forward and confidently know that our RAL will meet all of the requirements that we had when we started the process. One of the things that we are offering is a 30-minute special consultation. So if you reach out to us at steve@cisinspects.com, share your email contact information, which we have here at the last slide. We can essentially go in and get you those handouts, and we can line you up for that free consultation. And I want to thank you for your time today. And Gene and team, thanks again. Have a good day.